Hey, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the basement. Um, this is the second video for week 3. The first video was about choosing a topic. That's a separate one that's posted. On that one, we talk about how to find a good topic for this particular course because it's the same topic throughout. Remember that. You can't change your topics. Um, it also is important to remember that your topic needs to fit the assignment details, and that is also in that last video, and it's also in your course pack. So, this video is for after you have landed on a topic that you really like, that fits the class, and that will be comfortable for you to use throughout the rest of the semester. So, here we're going to talk about finding sources. And an assignment you have coming up is to pick a topic and find 3 sources related to that topic. And then you're going to present that information to us. And you'll also turn in a little written thing. So let's go to, oops, let me go up here, the syllabus. And you'll see that for week 4, which is next week, you will turn in that assignment. So present your topics and sources. Your speech lab tour is also due, and those are available now. So if we go down to that assignment, you'll see it here, and you can read the topic element, which is the first paragraph. But here is what you need to do for sources, and that's what we're focused on in this video. So you're not an expert in this topic, more than likely, so you will need to find good sources. And the focus of this is that this assignment calls for 3 different sources. Let me just put myself in the corner up here. 3 different sources that are quality, and one specifically needs to be a peer-reviewed journal. So if you look at this, you'll need a news source that is credible. The second one is a statistic that is credible, and then the last is, of course, that peer-reviewed journal article. Now, when you think about what does it mean to be credible, we'll talk about that here in this video so that you know you're picking good sources that are they're solid. What you also need to be thoughtful of is that I don't want you to double dip for this assignment, meaning if you find a news article that also has a statistic in it, can you say, okay, here's my news article, and for the second requirement, the statistic here, it's from the same article. Don't do that. And there's a couple of reasons. One, make sure you're practicing finding the information. But two, it's unlikely that the statistic is actually from the news article. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So review these details before you submit your work next week. Now let's zip back down here to, up too far. Um, we'll get there eventually. Here we go. Types of sources. Uh, it's probably not going to, the statistic from a news source is probably not from the news source because it's probably what's known as a secondary source as opposed to the primary source. Now, a primary source is original research. It's from the field. It's from an academic journal. It is original documents from a court case. Those are primary sources. Anything that reports on those sources, that information, is a secondary source. That doesn't mean that secondary sources are always bad, but it does mean that you want to always at least try to find the primary source. And if you can, use that instead of the secondary source. So let's look at an example of what I mean by this. Let's go here. So we talked about Mac versus PC in the last video. Let's do a little something different. Um, so again, it doesn't really fit your requirements because it's not sort of a serious enough issue. But I'm going to say dogs versus cats for pets, okay? Just so that we can find some information. Dogs versus cats as pets. Let's see what we find. Now, there's going to be a bunch of stuff that comes up. 62 million results. But we don't want to do that. Let's go to the news tab here and see what we get. Look first at this. Oh, sorry, that's not real clear. Not the title of the article, but where it comes from. The Beat. Never heard of it. That doesn't mean it's bad because you've never heard of it. It just means that you're going to have to work harder to tell us that it's credible. So let's skip down to something we are familiar with. Here are two: USA Today and the New York Times. Are you paying more attention to your dog or cat during the coronavirus quarantine? You're not alone, survey shows. Cats and dogs are up for adoption and finding homes with quarantined Americans. So, these two articles are about really the quarantine and our desire to get pets during that time. So, let's go to USA Today. Both USA Today and New York Times are good sources. What I will tell you is USA Today is, if it gives you the same information or one's not substantially more informative than the other, I'd go with USA Today. Why? Well, not because I think that they are more accurate, but because many people hear New York Times and they automatically assume that there's a strong liberal bias. Now, God help us if we get liberal and conservative bias with, hey, cats and dogs are being adopted because it's the quarantine. We're in trouble, which we already are anyway. But we'll try to focus on using like the USA Today because people on both sides of the political aisle usually are pretty calm about USA Today. So we can see this is written by Jessica Flores. It's from 2020. It's good stuff. Let's just do a quick scan. Um, Here we'll see that people are buying animals, I guess adopting animals, according to a new survey. Now, unfortunately, what I say her name was? Jessica, did not give us a hyperlink right here. It'd be great if she did, because that way we could click it and we would be able to go and see these numbers. So you've got the Banfield Pet Hospital in Portland, Oregon, the largest general veterinary practice in the USA, released a survey Tuesday that showed these statistics. Okay, so I don't know. Let's see if at some point we can get a link to that. We've got a link here that pets will not spread the coronavirus to their owners. Let's see where that takes us. A different USA Today article. This is a good example. Let me back up one really. This is a secondary source. It's reporting on the primary source, which is the Banfield Pet Hospital study. Um, then we went here, and that's also a secondary source that we saw. Here's why they need an emergency fund too. So there's some hyperlinks in here. Maybe not exactly what we need. That's okay. Let's keep going back over here, and let's see who they cite in this one. Pets carry no threat. The post said fake news is la la la. So this is just some Facebook page called Santa Paul's Little Helper. As God help us if we start coming in according to Santa Paul's Little Helper, but guidance from the Centers for Disease Control saying there's no known reason to believe that pets can spread COVID-19. Let's see if we can hyperlink right to that. We sure can. COVID-19 in animals. This, my friends, is a primary source because it's right from the source, the CDC. So, what we're going to do is use both. We're going to use both because we need both. I'm going to scan through here and see if there are any statistics cited. And if there are, maybe we can use those. I don't see anything that jumps out. We're still going to use this because this is going to tell us that we don't get the transmission from animals. Fine. Let's actually go back to this one, and I want to look up this Banfield Pet Hospital survey. And what was it? Did they even give us the name? Paying more attention. Okay. Let's just copy this. Take it over here. Well, let's make a new one. Whoops. Not what I wanted to do, is it? Hospital survey. Experience survey, client experience. Nope. Survey of care for animals, 2020 pandemic. Field study shows. So this is, again, a secondary source, unfortunately, because it's not from Banfield, but it's reporting on Banfield. They're the same stats we saw earlier. And let's see. Oh, look, our friends here. Who wrote this one? We like them. I don't see a name that's popping, but it's all right. Whoever it was, they're a good person. So we're going to click on this link, and that's going to take us to, here we go. Why do you need to know where I'm at? Banfield Pet Hospital. It's Allendale, for God's sake. From Vancouver, Washington, the new pet, normal, human's best friend. There are percentages here. Great. So we can use this for our source with percentages. I want to leave this up, and we're going to come back to it. But we've got a really nice statistic from an original source. Good. We have an original source here. We may not even need this one for this particular assignment, but if I were you, I would somehow put it to the side to use later because it's useful information. So, move it to a file or however you save connections, bookmark it, you name it. Then we've got this article. I don't think we really need that. Close that one. And then here, let's see if there's something that we can pull out of here because we need a news source. This is from you see this? Said in a news release. So again, the news release is the primary source, not this. Okay. I'm going to use this. There's a fine line about what comes from which source, but this one we're going to run with. It says, he pointed out, or she, I'm not sure, Garish pointed out that many shelters are empty, which is great, in my opinion. And so that's something that we can take away from this. So now we've got our news source. Great. Now, note, let's jump back here. We're getting ahead of ourselves, and that's okay. We haven't even started talking about types of sources when it comes to news sources and statistics and all that. We just looked at primary and secondary, and we've already made all of this progress that fast, okay? I tell you that because I don't want you to work hard. I want you to work smart and, exploring, seeing what's out there, following links, not spinning your wheels. If you don't see something that jumps out, just keep moving. And this can be relatively painless. But again, primary is preferable. Secondary is okay. But if you can find the primary, do that. Now, next up here are the academic peer-reviewed journal articles. You have to have at least one of these for this assignment, and at least one in all your speeches. Some speeches require two. The reason that these are so popular in academics, not because it has the word academic in it necessarily, but it's because of the peer review process. Now, if you're not familiar, what that means in a nutshell is someone like me, a professor, researcher, you name it, creates a study. So we have a question that we want to answer. We ask our university for permission. After we tell them how we're going to try to answer it, they have to make sure we're not going to, hook you up to car batteries and stuff. Then we go out, we do an experiment or collect data or whatever your particular style of research is. You write it up and you send it off to a journal that deals with your kind of material. Then the editor of that journal sends it out to at least 3 reviewers. Those 3 reviewers are usually of the devil because they just tear everything apart. I mean, they'll rip it up. You might send something off you think is great work and they'll make you cry sometimes. I've seen it, not done it, but um, when you get your work back, you're going to have lots of edits from the reviewers, but more importantly, you're going to have a decision from the editor. And that comes from the recommendation of the reviewers. The decision can be one of three things. It can be publish it now, maybe minor changes, but publish this. Two is revise and resubmit. And the third is no. Sorry, don't come back. So if you get a revise and resubmit, you're doing pretty well because getting an immediate publication, yes, it's good the way it is. Let's do it. It's rare. It's very rare. And that's good because in this process, then the author, me, has to go through all that information that I received from the reviewers and try to make all of them as happy as I can. And I send it back to the editor. They then send it off to either the same or other reviewers. They do the process again and it comes back and we keep going around. Maybe we may decide, okay, great, let's publish this. Or they may say, you know what, we gave you a second chance, but we still don't like it. So no. But this can take, the shortest I've ever published something like this is probably 3 to 6 months. The longest is 2.5 years, and then I gave up. Like it never got published. So it varies. Um, as you'll notice in the notes that this is the most reliable type of source out there. It's primary and it's rigorous. It doesn't get published unless there's a level of rigor that shows you did this in a very clear and professional way that followed protocol. It shows that you've explained how your measures work and you've really gone into the detail needed to say this is good stuff. Um, what I'll tell you though here is that it's not foolproof. It's solid. 99.9% of the time you can trust it, but not always. So the big example of this is from a guy named Andrew Wakefield who published an article that you may have never heard of, but I can guarantee you've felt or heard about the blowback from it. So Wakefield published an article that said vaccines cause autism. He found that in a study, he said. Put it together, he got it published. I'm sure the journal, well, I know now, everybody knows now that studies it, the journal was in a hurry to get something done because they thought it needed to get out because it was a hot topic. People were talking about it. So they published it. It was held as true for a few years. Then people started to explore it more. And long story short, he made it up. He completely falsified his records. He said that he did an experiment with these different people. He did nothing. He knew that if he found what he wanted to find, which is a connection, he'd be famous. And he was for a while. He's on talk shows, and I think he wrote a book, and you know, he's getting calls to come work at Oxford and places. He was from England, but he was eventually fired. They found out he was fired. He had his article retracted. He can't work in academia anymore. He can't do research anymore. Even his PhD granting institution came and said, basically, we want our degree back. He's not even a PhD anymore. It's serious. So I tell you that because it's not perfect, but I also say that because we take it very seriously as academics. If someone reports false information or lies to you here, it's not good for them. They'll lose their career if they're found. So with these, you're always going to have a lot of detail. Part of that detail is a list of citations. You can use that to find other related articles if that's something that you need more of, or just happen to see one that jumps out at you and you think, oh, that might work. Let me look at it. Oh, wow, that's good. So you can chase sort of the chain of citations and see where it takes you. Now, where do you find these sorts of articles? Well, you can go to Google Scholar if you want. You can go to Google. I don't recommend that. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between peer-reviewed and not. I actually recommend for these that you go to the library's website. Now, for most of this, start at Google. This is my job. I start at Google almost every time. But for databases, peer-reviewed journal articles are, let me break this down. I forget that people aren't as connected to this. Peer-reviewed journal articles are published in the journal of a particular field, and those journals are then housed in databases. And that's important to know because when we get to the citation of these things, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So let's just start out with finding what we're looking for. Let's go here and we will see gvsu.edu. Actually, gvsu.edu/library. Here, a lot of folks will want to jump right in and start going for it. Resist the urge. Go here, but then look down here at databases, books, journals, subject guides. You can use databases or subject guides. If you go to databases, you need to have some background knowledge because there are, as you see down here at the bottom, 349 different databases housed at Grand Valley. And so they all have a different sort of approach. Unless you know which one you want, you probably want to just sort of take it a different approach. So I like to go to subject guides. And when you get here, go down to communications because this is a communications course. You will then see COM 201 speech, which is for you. Then you've got Kim Ranger over here. If you are a student of the School of Com, Kim Ranger is your librarian. If you have questions about something specific in the library, she's your go-to. She's a wonderfully nice person and loves to help people. So if you have questions about the library, go to Kim all day long. For us, go up here to articles and databases. Kim and I got together and brainstormed which databases would be most useful for you. And here's what we came up with. If you're doing something about communication specifically, like in a 300, 400 level class, capstone, you want to use these. For us, I recommend Academic Search Ultimate. It's my favorite, and it's broad. So no matter what your topic is, you're likely to find something on it. Now, a couple things to remember here. This is not a Google, it's called a Boolean search. This is a more complex search, but I recommend that you start simple and see if it works. So if I just put cats versus dogs, let's see what I get. Okay, we've got 14,000 hits. And you'll see modern healthcare, veterinary team brief. By the way, where I'm looking at this is where the article is published. So if you look at this carefully, you will see that this one is a peer-reviewed article because it's environmental allergy, I think is the name of this journal. Let's click on it just so we can see. Use a lot of abbreviations here. Source, allergy. That's the name of the journal. Sometimes there's not the word journal in there, but we know that this is the journal because it's right there on source. It goes back to 1999. But again, we may or may not need something like that. I just wanted to show you where to find the source. We don't want to go through 14,000 articles. So what we're going to do to limit this is come over here, limit to, go ahead and click full text. What that means is the articles that will come up now are full text and they're not just abstracts. That didn't help us much. We know that we need look here, scholarly or peer-reviewed journal. Let's click that. We've now gone from 14,000 to 12,000. Still a bunch. Maybe we want to look at publication date. This is 1915 is the oldest article, up to 2020. I'm going to bump it up to 2010 and see what we get. 8,000. Getting there. Still a lot. At this point, I think it's important to say two things. One is that 1915 article. I don't want you to just see that and be like, yeah, no, that's garbage. That's old. There are times when it's useful to use old work. That is two reasons. One is if it is what's known as a seminal work. It's an original piece that's like the original piece in a particular field of study. You should probably talk about it. If the other reason is if you want to use it with a new source to compare the two, to show how things have changed over time, it's useful that way as well. Now, the other thing I want to pause here and talk about is that we've still got 8,000 hits, and that's just too many. So let's think about how we can reword our search. So cats versus dogs, and then let's just add in the word pets. Now we've gone from 8,000 to 2,000. That's a nice cut. Still too much though. Cats versus dogs in terms of pets. And let's put in another word here and say we want to know more about, well, we saw something about allergies. Let's do allergies. Now we've gone down to 579. Still quite a few. You don't really want to go through all of those, I don't think. I'm going to come back over to my limit. I'm going to hit references available. This means that it's got a citation list for you. Oh, look, 8. What do we have here? Or sometimes these aren't as useful because it's so limited. But let's see, something respiratory factors in Northwest India. I don't want to do an Indian study, so I'm not going to use that one. Risk factors in this. What is the connection to what we're looking at here? Oh, allergy. Okay. Let's go back out for a quick second here and take out this reference list. Cat and dog ownership during after the first year of life, risk for sensitization and reported allergy symptoms at 13. Boy, that's real specific. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. This one looks a little simpler. Let's see. Dog and cat exposure and respective pet allergy in early childhood. Yeah, we'll go with that. Source. This is from the Journal of Pediatric Allergy and Immunology from 2015. Great. Now, we've found something that seems like it's useful. Here's your next step. Go to the abstract down here. Background, the Association of Dog and Cat Exposure. I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud to you, don't worry. I can tell you that it's got 4,779 people involved. This is a Finnish study. I didn't want to do the other one because it's from India and I'm talking to an American audience. So do I want to do Finland? Not really. I'm an equal opportunity limiter here. Nothing against the countries or the people. It's just not what we're talking about. So what about these things? Dog exposure during the first year of life and allergies. This is from Allergy, that same journal. Let's see what we find here in this one. So summary. The effect of dog exposure on children in developing allergic disease or reaction remains controversial. So scan down, scan down, scan down. Let's go right here. Dog keeping was not significantly inversely associated with having less than or equal to one elevated and only approached statistical significance with asthma. Conclusions and clinical reference. Results likely vary due to variability of specific exposure, outcome associations, and subgroups. Important allergic disorder associations will be missed without subgroup analysis. Okay, now that's a lot of technical stuff. But let's go down. This is the article here. Go to the discussion section. There it is, discussion. See what we find here. Dog keeping and dog allergen. While largely consistent, there were some differences in stratum-specific results for living with a dog in the first year. The discrepancies are likely due to the fact that although the dog ownership is associated with higher levels of dog allergen in the home, approximately half of the homes will report having no dog in the home had detectable levels of dog allergen. Dogs are everywhere. The patterns were similar in living with the dog and detectable and without. Maybe this is all we want to put in here. So, if we're going to talk about, in general, the idea that people are owning cats and dogs as pets, In the persuasive speeches, we're going to talk about which one's better. We're going to pick cats, we're going to pick dogs. For this one, what we can do, and this is where you need to get a little bit creative. It's not unethical at all. It's just you thinking outside the box. So I didn't see anything here that was just like people pick cats for these reasons and people pick dogs for these reasons. That would be too easy. That's you're not going to find something prepackaged for you out there that you can just always plug in. I mean, sometimes, but not usually. So maybe we just say that for cat and dog ownership for pets, some people are concerned about allergies when it comes to owning cats and dogs. However, at least one study finds that whether you have a dog or a cat, specifically dog in this study, in the house or not, you will still have roughly the same amount of dog allergens in your house. So, not having a dog, especially if you keep it, maybe on hard surfaces, not on the carpet, that sort of thing, it's not going to make a huge difference if you have a dog or not. The allergens will still get into your home somehow. Um, and that's according to, and then we'll cite the source. There are other things here that we could look at, but that's just an example of how we might pull this out. Whenever you see something like this work supports and extends the earlier work from our Detroit childhood allergy study, a birth cohort, predominantly white children, same religion, back in the 80s, children who lived with 2 or more dogs or cats. Now, oh, look at this, or cats. Let's use this. In the first year of life, had decreased odds of having a positive skin prick test, at least one, blah, blah, blah. So, this study supported the one that showed if you have 2 dogs or cats, you're less likely to be allergic to them if you have it at birth. Now, they've probably, let's see where the citation is here. Earlier work, Detroit childhood allergy study. I bet they've cited it somewhere else, and that's why we're not seeing it here. Oh, just kidding. It's right there. Sorry. Hyperlink 41, Journal of the American Medical Association. It's from 2002, but some things like allergic reactions don't always change with time. So 2002 might be okay for that. Now we've got another journal that we could use. Bam, it's right there. And we can find that pretty easy because watch this. JAMA, maybe you even know what JAMA means, Journal of the American Medical Association, but you see JAMA 2002 and you think, boy, I'd really like to get the actual citation for that. Okay, go back over here to Grand Valley. Go to, it's actually now on this one. Let's come back out. Let's go to journals. Begins with, just type in JAMA. See if we've got it. JAMA, country review Jamaica. Peer reviewed. JAMA Dermatology. There's a lot of different JAMA journals. So we just want this one. The Journal of the American Medical Association is nothing's different. 98 to present, an EBSCOhost. So we're going to click that. It's going to take us to that collection. And here it is. Here are all the JAMA journals from past issues. We'll jump back. We can see it's 2002. This number 288 is the issue number. So let's go over, find journal. Whoops, sorry. 2002, 2020. There we go. 2002. It was 288. See, 287. 288's over here. So 288 goes on for a while. Now we need to look at page numbers. And the page was 963. Okay. 288. It would be in August. Here we go. Let's check this. This will bring up all the articles that are in that one. So, what was it called? Exposure to dogs and cats is what we're looking for. Here it is. Bam. Click it, and you've got it because you're at Grand Valley. So, if we wanted to go and dig to this one, we just found it. And we did that because we followed the citations. We chased the citations. We saw something that was useful. Bam, we took it to the next step. Again, you're only going to need to find the news source, the statistic, and a peer-reviewed journal article. But you see here, I mean, this hasn't been that long, and we're finding lots of good stuff. So don't give up. Work smart, not hard. Now, let's go back over here and talk about real quick on the journal articles, and really all of them. Make sure that you're citing it using this, the journal name and the date of publication. We don't need to know that this was written by Ownby, Johnson, Peterson, right? Who? We don't know who that is. But if you say the Journal of the American Medical Association in an article published in 2002 noted that, bam, and then you tell us about it. Do that with all your sources. A CNN report from 2020 revealed that kind of thing. Okay, we can skip through this part. News sources. Again, we've talked a little bit about that. Make sure that it's easily recognizable. And if it's not, you'll need to tell us that it's credible and why. Do that very briefly. Very briefly. Don't use your time for that except for maybe 10 seconds. Google News is a good place to start, which we've seen that. Local news is fine usually. I mean, the Lanthorn works. Local newspapers, local TV stations. Those are good. I mean, it doesn't have to be some world famous source, although those are nice as well. When you're evaluating if a news source is good or not, look at least in one way, look at these things. The date. Is there a date there? If not, I don't know. I don't know if you want to use it because we don't know where it was from really. Is there an author listed? If not, it could be a red flag. It could be something going on there. Don't use fake news. Don't get tricked. I know you know the Onion in that, but there's a ton of these websites out there. Don't use blogs or editorial work where it's someone's opinion that's not reporting on fact. And then use the say it out loud test. So if you want to say, you found something from Billy Bob's News Shack, you don't want to come in and be like, according to a 2020 article from Billy Bob's News Shack, you know, it's not a good look. So what I have here, source bias and reliability. I want to show you this. This is in your pack. Come with me down here. I'll talk about all this in a second. Here is a media bias chart. You want to use sources that are here. Okay. So CNN there's MSNBC. The way this works, you've got left leaning, so liberal leaning, MSNBC, Mother Jones, Daily Beast, The New Yorker, that kind of stuff. Over here, you've got right-wing news, conservative stuff, National Review, Washington Examiner, Washington Times, that sort of stuff. Then here in the center, in this gray box, these are your best sources in terms of being credible. They are very minorly political, and they give just news, because the way this reads from top to bottom is that if you're closer to the top, this is just fact reporting. Usually it's mostly fact reporting. The further down you get, the more you get into commentary, people giving you their opinion on the news, not just the news. Big difference there. So try to stick here. And this would be a nice happy area for you. There is a website out there. Let me open a new tab. Okay. Oops. Closing them, not opening them, aren't I? Go to Media Bias Fact Check. That's an organization that very thoroughly and meticulously assesses the bias of a news source. And the way they do this, briefly, they'll take off all the identifying information of where an article's from, give it to a ton of people that work for them. They will then decide how biased they feel it is and turn it back in. They'll never know what they just read, where it was from. But what it will do for you is, well, it does a few things, but we're going to just focus on the search function here. There's that one. So let's look at like CNN. CNN, it is bias fact check, left bias. They're saying CNN is left bias. So, you can read it here. Moderately to strongly biased towards liberal causes through story selection and political affiliation. Okay, now what about its rival, Fox News? Fox News, right bias. Shocker. So, again, check any source you want here. They're not, it's not going to be exhaustive, but it will have, there's hundreds in here. To jump back over here briefly, notice one thing real quick. Like, I know it's hard to see, but this is NBC News, okay? And it's right there. Down here is MSNBC News. It's much more toward the commentary side, and it's further to the left. Notice that those aren't the same thing. They have NBC there, sure, but it's not the same thing. And there are a couple other examples like that. So if you can get it in this circle, that's ideal. Keep it above the CNN line here, though, and you should be okay. All right. Next up, we've got our news sources. Let's go to statistics here. Again, these can come from journal articles. They can come from news, but usually the news is going to be a secondary source. So you've got a few websites that are great resources for stats, and some that aren't, that people use a lot. So let's first of all look at the good ones. Gallup. Gallup poll. You can go to Gallup and find people's opinions on so many things. This has been around, as you see there, from 1935. But like Trump job approval. We'll just go here. So according to a Gallup poll, we can see, since we moved that out of the way, that as of August 12th, there was an approval rating of 42%, and a disapproval rating of 55%. You can just take that to the bank, right? There's other surveys that are going to give you slightly different numbers, but as far as just saying, hey, this one happened to find it, you don't need to explain how they did their survey because it's got the credibility built into Gallup. So that's a really great resource. Similar one will be Pew Research. There's another one, 538, but you can use those websites for your stats, no problem. The one that people use a ton that they shouldn't is Statista. Let's go here, Statista. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong. They've got great charts and graphs and all this, but there's a little bit of an issue. So let's do Trump job approval, just as an example. Trump presidential job approval. And they're going to tell us that it is about the same as the other one. I don't really need to do that. Now, where did this come from? It says Statista 2020. But then down here you'll see show source. Click it. You got to pay. Don't use this. Do not use this. Statista does not do their own research. they are a secondary source. And in order to find the primary source, they want you to give them money. Stay away from that. Okay. You may find things in like popular or industry magazines, like that Wired. If it's something about a computer, like Wired magazine, or if it is cats versus dogs, let's just do that real quick. Is it Cat Fancy magazine? Is that right? Cat Fancy, right? So this might be it is a very credible source about cats, but you know, it's not going to be one that we want for this assignment, but feel free to include it in your speech if it seems to work. Is that the guy from Criminal Minds? Yes, yes, it is. Okay, sorry. Uh, so think about using those if it is, you know, industry related. Um, you're going to find a lot of different magazines out there for a lot of different interest areas. Now, academic or university sources. This is not the peer reviewed stuff. Okay, this is if you go onto the websites and you look for information. So, like for example, if I go to let's just do gvsu.edu/ oh wait for it, speech lab, shocker. Um, this is really nice. Well, it's keeping me in cat fancy and taking me to Amazon. Are you gonna buy me a subscription? Here it is. So now, if I wanted to go to our guide sheets and say, oh, here's anxiety, and then I could watch this great video with Dom, or I could read this and cite it. You can do that. That's fine because down here, who wrote this? Kelsey Hines and Carl Brown. Uh, where did we get our information from? Secondary source to primary. Stephen Lucas's The Art of Public Speaking, 10th edition. So again, you could use this as a secondary source, or you could go to our primary source because we list it, because that's what responsible research does. So, this is pretty not controversial. However, think about another example. If you go to Harvard's website and look at, probably Johns Hopkins would be better, to look at where did life begin. Johns Hopkins and Harvard and those schools are going to tell you that it's, the Big Bang and evolution. Fine. If you go to Liberty University, which is the largest Christian university in the country, you're going to hear about creationism. So I'm not here to take a stand on that right now tonight, but I am going to tell you that it varies. So, if you want to use these sources, it's best to do it on a not hard controversial topic, um, or in a controversial way, I suppose. But be careful with that because you're going to get some different takes. What I mean here with this level of expertise, what is a school known for? So, just as an example, like Michigan State, state schools are usually known more for, like technical things, and and you go to the state, is usually known for more, sort of academic heady things. Not always, but that's the way it often works. I mean, if anything with tech in it is technical, polytechnic. I went to high school in Virginia, and a lot of people went to Virginia Tech, right? And it's technically the VPI, Virginia Polytechnical Institute. If they come out with an article about philosophy, it may be great, but I don't trust it as much as a school like Oxford or Harvard, where you can get, PhDs in this kind of stuff. But if it's something about agriculture, I'm going to trust the technical schools more. So just keep that in mind. And then the type of institution, is it an R1, which is heavy research, R2, which is significant research, comprehensive, which Grand Valley is, that gives you sort of the broadest perspective and gets a little bit of everything, or is it liberal arts, which is, the really small class sizes where you're just doing like an hour college of liberal arts and sciences. There's not a technology area. If a liberal arts school comes out with a big finding on, tech, you need to really read that carefully with a critical eye. All right, next up, you got government sources. Who knows? Honestly, I've got this in here because this is generally true, but you know what? I'll just skip it. Don't use government sources right now. you can't trust anything. So we're gonna let that go. Expert opinion is good. If someone who is considered an expert gives you an opinion or they write an opinion and it's out there, you can use that as if it relates to your topic. Now, understand a couple things here too. One, experts aren't a dime a dozen. So if you're an expert in something, you have a terminal degree in that area. That's one way to be an expert. Two would be to have a professional experience in that field for over 20 years. And the third way is to have some sort of a certification of expert. So, like in the military, they're expert marksmen. You can't, go to school for that, like the whole degree program. But you can be considered an expert. Same thing with like electricians. You can be a master electrician and make a lot more money than I do here. That's thanks my cousin. Uh, but he didn't go to college, but he would be considered an expert in his field. So make sure that you're really working with an expert. Second thing, make sure that that expert is talking about something in their area of expertise. So if you came and we're talking about global warming, climate change, and you say, according to Grand Valley's Dr. Carl Brown, climate change is real and it's caused by, what's his PhD in? Communication. Oh, well, it doesn't hit the same, right? It's different. So make sure that you're using an actual expert in that field. Um, if you have a non-expert, you can still use them as a contextual source, but don't expect that to be one that you're going to get sort of credibility points on. Things you should avoid: wiki pages, because those can be altered frequently. Blogs, unless you have a clearly written article or a blog post by an expert in that field. So, if you go to techieblog.com, you probably don't want to use that unless it's sort of like, oh my gosh, have you guys seen it? Bill Gates wrote this great blog post on Techie Blog. Well, then now you're citing Bill Gates, not the blog necessarily. Um, yeah, we've talked about the other thing here. Okay. Be careful if an article, for example, on medicine mentions money being cited as an article specifically about money. What I mean here is sort of, if an article tells you that it's going to discuss one thing, but it makes big claims about other things and assumes those are true, you want to do more research or just not use that. And again, to revamp or review this part, oral source citation, always according to or something similar, the date, and then whichever order you want. The publication, the journal name, the news agency name, the government branch name if you're using that. We, again, don't need the title or the author. That's just less useful for us unless it's something that's a household name. The idea here is that through what you give us orally, we're going to be able to go and find that source if we want to and read it. So make sure that that's happening. Now, you've got a blank here, and that's fine, because the next thing you'll see, and that's all the content, but these two sheets, this one and this one, this is your assignment. This is what you'll turn in on week 4. So the topic and source assignment worksheet. Here, what is your topic? Enter this information. I give you an example of how I would do it. College campuses and oral communication centers. And I could answer these questions. How will you discuss it? Informatively, specifically to Grand Valley. How will you discuss it persuasively? Specific to Grand Valley. Why is this relevant to your audience? This one is so important. If you can't think of at least 2 reasons your topic connects with your classmates, different topic is needed. Then for this sheet, this is your source sheet. 3 blanks. I give you an example of something here so you can see how I'm looking for the information to be laid out, but give me your info here. So this might say, CNN article, title this, journal name, well, it's not going to be journal, but CNN, date, author, if you need that sort of thing. Again, orally, I only want to hear CNN 2020, but to look it up if needed, all that is going to be useful. So lay those out and then answer these questions. Why is this credible? Why is CNN credible? Well, you can say they're a well-respected news agency that, when plugged into the media bias fact check website, came out as left bias. However, they are still useful in terms of their non commentary news. Great. How do you plan to use this? You can answer that. Quotation, if it's a quotation, or a stat. This is the only time you'll need to fill this out. So just one of these, the stat. What stat are you going to use from this? Just give me that information here. We talked about the bias fact check, so you are familiar with that, I hope. Remember, stay in this area. You should be all right. So let me come back up to you here for a second. What the big takeaway here is that you've got a little time to come up with your topic and to find sources on that topic. However, don't wait. Go ahead and start now, and you'll find that this is a much easier process the sooner you start, so that you can sort of chunk the work out a little bit. Finding these sources can be very easy. I mean, we've been talking for about an hour, I guess, and we found a lot of stuff. We found more than we need. So it may not come that easy to you the first time. Maybe your topic doesn't make it that easy on you, but a couple hours, you should be in good shape. So try that. If you run into issues, as always, let me know. We've talked about going to the speech lab. I also just want to give you the information that, yeah, you need to go and get your tour in by next week as well. But what I wanted to show you is, if you're not familiar with the Knowledge Market, gvsu.edu/KM Knowledge Market. And here you're going to be able to work with all of our services, and you probably will want to work with research consultants if you're having trouble with this. So I'm going to click this, and there I can make a virtual appointment, and I'll sign in to Book It. And there's a video on our Blackboard site about using Book It. It works the same at their service as it does at Speech Lab, but those folks are really good at helping you use the right search terms to find a source, or evaluating a source if it's good or not, and why. So use those folks. It's a free visit, just like the Speech Lab. But again, let me know if you have trouble with this. Work diligently on it so that it's not like crammed at the end. That's what makes it tough, and I think you'll be all right. Okay, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.